Hello. Completing the squares is very important to solve quadratic functions, right? This we have a quadratic function standard form, and if we need to find maximum or minimum values, then completing the squares is the way to do it. Now here, since the coefficient of x square is positive, the parabola is going to move up, so we have a minimum. But the whole thing is, where is that vertex and where is the minimum point? We can get it if we do completing the squares and convert our standard form into the vertex form. I will show you now the technique of doing it. So you should follow the steps like this. First thing, look at the leading coefficient and factor this out from the first two terms. Don't touch the last term, okay? So here I'll factor out just the number 3. So once you do that, I prefer to use square brackets, and then 3x squared divided by 3 is only x squared minus, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, so you get 2x. And now you close the bracket, and you have to keep this 8 away, okay? So first step is to factor the leading coefficient, correct? Now, second step is look at this term 2x. Half this term, square half of this term, and then add and subtract it. Why do we do so? You remember perfect squares? A square plus or minus 2ab plus b square. That is a hint, right? So what we will do is we'll write this as x square minus 2x. And what is half of 2? It is 1. So we will add and subtract square of 1, okay? And keep the other terms like this. Why did we do this? Because I hope you remember that what is, in this case it is minus, therefore I'm writing this. What is a square minus 2ab plus b square equals to? It is a minus b whole square. You remember that? So what we have here is a square, and that's a b square. And the middle term is 2 times a and b, do you see? Minus 2. So once it is like this, we can factor these 3 terms and write it as a perfect square. Do you see that? So that's what we are going to do, and that's the strategy. So it becomes 3 times, I can write this as x from here, then the minus sign from here, and 1 comes from there, square. So these 3 terms, the trinomial, is a perfect square of x minus 1. Do you get it? Minus 1 square is minus 1, bracket close, plus 8. Next step is to open the bracket. So we open the bracket, multiply 3 with both the terms. 3 times x minus 1 whole square, and then 3 times minus 1, which is minus 3, plus 8 plus 8. And now combine your constants. We get 3 times x minus 1 whole square, and this is minus 3 plus 8 is plus 5. So do you see, we started with standard form, right? This is standard form, right? And this is vertex form. Is that okay? Now from here we know this is a parabola whose vertex is at 1 and 5, correct? And it opens upwards. And what are the steps? Steps are 3 times 1, 3, 5, 7. So this particular form is very important for us. It gives us the minimum or maximum. In this case, this gives us minimum, right? Like this is a parabola, kind of like this, correct? Where what is this value of vertex? This value of vertex is 1 and 5. Is that okay? And the steps which we go up by, right? The steps which you go up by are 3 times 1, 3, 5, 7, like that. You see? So if you go by those steps, you can sketch your parabola. So that's the beauty of this. Now let me take another example, and this time I'm taking another function gx, which is having a leading coefficient negative, right? And this problem you will see many times in examples where, you know, like you throw a stone or something like that and things are falling. A projectile motion in general, right? We'll have this kind of equation. let's see this. Okay, so we have a equation here, gx is equal to minus 5t square plus 30t plus 7. So this equation is slightly different from previous, that the leading coefficient for us is negative. So we expect a parabola like this in this time, right? Opening downwards, and so a maximum, correct, in this case? This was a minimum, is it okay? Now, exactly the same process will be followed. Just follow the same process. First step is, yes, leading coefficient is to be factored, which is minus 5. Open square brackets, right? Why? Because I don't want to confuse you with two types of brackets. There are two types of brackets, so make them different. So once you do that, you get t squared here, and this is minus, so the sign will change. Do you see? So it will be minus 30 divided by 5 is 6. T, correct? Bracket close, and keep this 7 outside. Is it okay? Now, minus 5. And now what will you do? Can you tell me? You got minus 6t. What is half of 6? Half of 6 is 3. Square that number. 3 square, I'll write 3 square, plus and minus 3 square, okay? Both. So when you add and subtract same number, effectively you're not making a change. This statement is equivalent to the previous one. Now, let's see. Do we get a perfect square? Yes, we have. As you can see here, this is a minus b whole square, where a is t, b is 3. Middle term is minus 2 times 3 is 6t. Do you see that? So I can write this as t minus 3 whole square, correct? And I'm left with minus 3 square, which is 9 for me, plus 7. Now it's the time to open the square brackets. Once I do that, I get minus 5 times t minus 3 whole square, and this minus and minus becomes plus. 9 times 5 is 45, plus 7, and we'll combine the constants, left with minus 5 times t minus 3 whole square plus 52. So that's our function in vertex form. Do you see that? So we again converted standard to a vertex form. Now here, what is the maximum? The maximum is at 3 and the value is 52. So we have a maximum at 3 and the value of maximum is at 52, correct? Steps this time is 5 and they're coming downwards. So this is how you do completing the squares method, correct? I hope you understand. So let's summarize the steps. Do you remember the steps? First step is factor leading coefficient, okay? And what is the second step? Second step is half the middle term. Half the middle term, right? Term, I should write coefficient, right? And what to do with this half the middle term? Square it and then add and subtract it. Do you see that? So in this case the middle term was 6t and the coefficient was 6. So you do half of 6, which is 3. Add and subtract 3 square. Then what happens? Then you get a perfect square, right? So you get a perfect, let me write trinomial, right? Square. And then finally open brackets, right? And then combine the constants, right? Constants, or you could say simplify. So follow these steps. Once you do them in order, the completing the squares is done. And by completing the squares, we really mean to convert standard form into vertex form of an equation. Okay, I hope you understand it, correct? Try some questions on your own. Thank you.